Good morning. Our scripture lesson is from Matthew 6:19-20. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. This is the word of the Lord.
So as Pastor Keith shared, my name is Chris, and I currently serve at the Virginia United Methodist Foundation, and it's great to be with you. Our offices are at the Conference Center in Richmond, and so my family's here with me, and I want to start off it's a tough crowd this morning, and you get live fact checks, so you're gonna keep me honest. So I do want to start off with a little bit of a story, just so you know a little bit about me. It's been almost 20 years ago that I was a seminary student, and when you're a seminary student, you get kind of a little bit of on-the-ground training as you're going through school. And so that first summer, after I completed my first year of seminary, I took Old Testament, New Testament, learned a little bit of theology. You get sent out to serve a small church, and when you go to Duke Divinity School, it's typically a small, rural, western North Carolina church out in kind of the middle of nowhere. And God has a strange sense of humor when you say you want to go into ministry. Ministry takes a unique form in those seasons. And so I got sent to the very far side of western North Carolina. I'm a runner, and I was a runner back then when I was in seminary, and I used to love that I could say I ran to South Carolina and back in the morning. It was about a mile from the house I was staying at that summer to South Carolina and back. And so I would do that on a regular basis. And so I got sent to this small town, and I started about this same weekend about 20 years ago in Saluda, North Carolina. And I came into town on a Saturday night, and it was already starting to get a little dark by the time I got all the way there from Durham. And I went to church the next Sunday, and at church on Sunday, leading in worship, I heard about someone that was in the hospital that was going to be coming home and was going to be on hospice. And so as a 23-year-old that was still not even quite sure exactly if I wanted to do this whole ministry thing, that afternoon, I was going to have to make one of the hardest visits as my first visit ever. Dave was a Vietnam veteran. And the other thing that I had heard about Dave that morning, he was the guy that got communion bread every month. There was a certain bakery in town, and Dave would go by on Friday afternoon and pick up the bread that was specially made for the church for that first Sunday communion every month. And that was Dave's one thing he did for the church. And so it was already a conversation piece about who was going to pick that up next month. And so I got in my car that afternoon. Dave was already now back at his home. There was going to be a hospital bed for him as he entered those last days in hospice care at home. And I got in my car to go, and I pulled in front of the house, and I made one last phone call to a mentor because I had no idea what I was about to do. I was already shaking before I opened the car door, and I called my mentor, and I was like, what is this going to be like? And it was a short conversation. He really only asked me one question that I remember, and was, have you ever been around someone dying before? Because it's not going to be pretty. And so I stepped out of the car and went in. And in just the living room right there when you walked in the house was Dave in the hospital bed. There was family members that had also kind of come into town that weekend to say their last goodbyes to Dave. I talked with his wife, Linda. I sat on the couch in the living room. The TV was on. It was a bizarre scene. The TV was on, and I talked with like that one kind of crazy, goofy uncle that everyone has in the family. He was obsessed with golf. The golf tournament was on, whatever one was on that weekend, and he kept calling me Phil Mickelson. He thought I looked like Phil Mickelson. That was a compliment? Compliment, all right. And as I sat there was other milling around going on. It was strange. I couldn't quite figure out what was going on. There's Dave in a bed laying there. I'm sitting on a couch. There's a TV on, and other family members were moving around. They had come in for the weekend to say those last goodbyes, but they realized they needed to help out Linda begin to clean out and organize. And so in the midst of someone dying right there, Dave's stuff was already getting sorted and cleaned and organized. It was an odd scene. Some of his stuff was putting into piles of things that folks wanted to take and keep. Dave had this odd collection. He liked to collect pocket knives. There was like boxes and boxes of pocket knives. Some of them had sentimental value. They went, he got them in a certain place on a certain trip. Others were being discarded to I assume, to go to Goodwill. Some of them might have even ended up on the curb. They were being helpful in that moment because there was lots to do. I was on the couch watching people clean Dave's stuff, organize it so Linda didn't have to. Dave was sitting or lying in a bed right there. It was an odd scene. And so I prayed with Linda and I left, still shaking just as I shook when I walked in. And when I got back into my car, there was this heartfelt realization that we can't take anything with us. Everything we accumulate will be given away, will be sold, or taken to the trash. And today's message is heavy because it's on God's perspective about our possessions, all that we have, including our money. The scripture reading that we just heard from Matthew 6 comes from one of Jesus' most famous teaching scenes. It's the Sermon on the Mount. And it's in that sermon that he teaches us how to pray, to love our enemies, and he shares this in chapter 6. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on heaven, where moths and vermin destroy, where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. So Jesus lays out for us here in these two verses, two categories. There's treasures on earth, and treasures on earth can be stolen, can be destroyed. But then there's treasures in heaven which are eternal and secure. Earthly treasures, moth, the rust, the vermin, the thieves, will lead to inevitable decay or loss. The reality check is all of our possessions will either be destroyed or taken away. Because here's the thing. Followers of Jesus, even atheists agree with that point of Jesus. Everything fades away. That's a fact of life. All of it will be destroyed or taken away from you. So my wife and I, back in 2018, were called to the Florida conference. We were serving in Nashville. And my wife and I were invited by the Florida conference to start a new church in Tampa, in a particular area of Tampa called South Tampa. It's a flood-prone area. It's right along the water. It's kind of on a peninsula between Hillsborough Bay and Tampa Bay. And so they asked us to come start a new church. The demographics were saying that the millennial population was going to grow in the next 10 years, and they wanted to be on the front end of that curve. And so they invited us to start a new church. And so we started a new church in Tampa. And so back in 2022, we had the opportunity to, when you start a new church, you have no building, you have no people, you have no things. And so you start to try to gather people. You gather a launch team. And so you gather that launch team. Our church, because as you start getting to having things as a church, you have to have sound systems and AV and a projector, and then you need a trailer to store that in. And so then when we were totally a set-up, tear-down church. It was sort of like we were like a concert band on like every Sunday. We would pull up our trailer to. We met in community centers. We met in a synagogue. We met in the back of a deli. We met at some other churches. We met at a middle school. We met at a wedding venue. A couple wedding venues. And so wherever we were meeting, because when you're a church planner, you also are hustling for space. You want the cheapest, easiest space for people to find. Plus you need to have some parking is key as well. And so we'd pull up our trailers, unload everything, set up, tear it all back down, put it all back in the trailer, and do the same thing the following Sunday. And so in 2022, we had the opportunity to purchase a bowling alley. And so we purchased a 16-lane bowling center in the heart of South Tampa. It was for sale. Their owner was retiring. And so we took the 16 lanes down to 12 lanes. And where those 16 lanes, or those 4 lanes that we took out where we were putting in classrooms, we had the opportunity to then also lease the space back out to an operator that would run a bowling alley the other 6 days of the week. We were putting in, some of what y'all have with projectors and screens and cameras, so that it would still be functional for us on Sundays without minimizing some of the setup and tear down. And we were set to move into it by the late fall of 2024 was our construction timeline. Our contractor had guaranteed we'd be in by Christmas, so that we would have our first Christmas in 2024. Well, needless to say, if you are remembering back to where I started on this little story about planting a church in Tampa, is we planted in this area called South Tampa that's on a peninsula that's surrounded by water on 3 sides between Hillsborough Bay and Tampa Bay. A strong afternoon storm, if you've ever traveled and visited Florida, sometimes, about 3 o'clock on the dot, it'll start raining torrentially for about 20 minutes, and it will just be straight downpour. Most of the streets in South Tampa will normally kind of flood a little bit during that torrential downpour. They'll eventually drain, but it's not the most flowing place sometimes. Well, between September 26th and October 9th of 2024, Tampa was hit by back-to-back hurricanes, Hurricane Helene and Milton. And so not only that, between those 2 storms, it flooded our own house personally. It put 2 feet of water in a bowling alley that had just been painted. Flooring was about to go down that week. They were putting in all the new carpets and the LVT. All that had just been done. We had an entire storage unit worth of about $100,000 of audiovisual equipment that was about to be installed. But now there was 2 feet of water in the bowling alley. The lanes were totally warped. The roof got peeled back as well. We lost both of our cars because our house flooded as well, like I said. And our church building, the thing that we are moving towards, going from this setup, tear down, every Sunday church system to having a permanent home that actually had an economic engine in it that would have actually been a benefit surplus to our operating budget, was flooded and devastated. The worship space, the outreach center that we imagined this bowling alley to become, was just completely unusable. It was a total loss between the floodwaters from the exterior plus the roof being ripped off. There was quite an emotional toll. It felt like we had literally lost everything. At least everything we could see or touch. And the storm forced us to reckon with the question, how secure are the things we're investing in? Are they temporary or are they eternal? But I can tell you, here are some things that remained. People showed up. Church members, friends, neighbors showed up for us. They took care of our kids so we could cut out the drywall from our home. They came for 3 or 4 days straight and made that 4-foot cut around our home to take out the drywall to begin the drying process. They brought meals over to us when we didn't have a kitchen. They showed up. Their prayers carried us, and we felt God's presence through them. And it was in that season that we learned that earthly things can be washed away, but the eternal treasures of faith, relationships, generosity can't be taken away. And so just over a year ago, I moved up to Richmond first in the early spring in April. And then the rest of the family was coming in June. And so we started over. And it's sometimes how quickly you can kind of forget how things used to be and those lessons that you learn. So we got a new house here in Richmond. We got new furniture. This is a picture of my son's Will's room that I had sent my wife last year. Like I said, I moved up about a month or two before they came up. And so I worked in that season to diligently get, the house ready for them to come. And so I painted rooms. We got new furniture. Everything. I wanted everything to be perfect because we had, spent so long in that turmoil of the 6 months after the storm, living in a temporary place after we losing so much of our stuff. But I quickly forgot in that season, last June, that there was an infestation coming. There was vermin coming. And they have names, David, Emma, and Will. They might be moth, they might be vermin. But that perfect home that I wanted with the nicely painted walls and we had new furniture, and all of a sudden it became, don't touch that. You're going to put a scratch in that. Don't touch that. You might have a dent, right? Because even that perfect house, I just wanted to negotiate with them. Can y'all just keep it can I get 6 months, at least 3 months? We don't have a hole in the wall. Literally we had my daughter I think a week after getting into the house, how kids do, we're sitting in the chair and they kind of rock back. Well, she rocked back a little too far. Luckily, she was fine. The wall behind her, as the chair then flew, put a nice quarter-size hole in a wall that we had just painted. So then I'm now back at Home Depot getting spackle and stuff to smooth it and sand it and restarting that whole process over again. So much. I wanted that perfect home. But it just wasn't going to be possible because it was temporary. It's not something secure. And how much time do we spend working for these temporary things? We think about our cars, our house, our 401k, the boat, the vacation home. The truth is, when we center our lives on temporary things, our work, those things we sacrifice for, sometimes even we sacrifice our integrity for them. It costs us our relationships. And all of that, Jesus' message in this is, that's a terrible investment. There's no ROI. It's the worst possible return in light of what he gives us in eternity. Kind of zooming out a little bit, we're in a big moment here. There's something that's going to happen in the next 15 to 20 years that economists say is the greatest wealth transfer in history. Conservative estimates is that there are $84 trillion that are going to change hands moving from one generation to the next. $84 trillion. But here's the thing. It's not just going to transfer money. You know what else is going to get transferred? Values, priorities, faith in that. Because in the day, everyone's money is going to go somewhere. But what story will it tell when it goes somewhere? What story will it tell? So let's go back to the other side. Treasures in heaven. What are they? Simple definition here. Anything done for Jesus. Anything done for Jesus. It's secure, can never be taken away, can never be destroyed. Jesus says, focus on this. Store up as much as you can. Everything you say or do for Jesus. Every word, every action, every sacrifice made in his name. And it's especially relevant to how we use our possession and money. All right, so let's contrast it real quick again. Earthly treasures, temporary. Heavenly treasures, eternal, secure, forever. So maybe you're sitting here today and the red flags have gone up, the alarm bells are going off in your head, and you're like, this pastor's talking about money in church. So why do we talk about money in church? Well, first off, I've met Pastor Keith a couple times now, and there's no private jet sitting back over here on this side of the parking lot.
Not yet.
Not yet. It's because I don't want you to get to the end of your life and you have all of your possessions dragged to the curb or sold at a garage sale. I don't want that for you. I want you to be able to tell the story of your faith and your values and your priorities and how you care for your possessions. So what kind of treasures are you storing up? Because we all store up treasures, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And I admit, I was doing it. When we had the nice house again, the walls were all painted, there was drywall everywhere, I wanted to store it up. I wanted to keep it just like that. Even if unintentionally, I knew that was not going to be what I wanted in life. See, our church building in Florida was destroyed and flooded, but we invested in an eternal impact. I can tell you about Peter or Julie or Blake or Claire that were baptized. I can tell you about Bobby. Okay, let me tell you about Bobby, actually. Bobby, father of 4. He was one of the first people to say yes to our launch team. Those first 30 folks that were going to show up to be a part of our worship service, Bobby volunteered to be one of our guitar players. Bobby's an insurance guy, father of 4, like I said. Would come at 8 o'clock in the morning, unload that trailer, would stay till probably about 12:30, making sure it was loaded back up after he played during the service. Sweat is just dripping down his face. It's Florida, it's August, loading a trailer. It's hot. It's not a fun job, but Bobby did it faithfully every week. Bobby has now, like I said, father of 4, has left his job in insurance, is now the worship leader of a church because he felt that initial call to ministry, allowing his gifts to be used. An investment and eternal impact. We used to use a horse trough for baptisms. It's a fancy horse trough on 2 like Sam's Club carts, essentially. Had some nice paneling in it. But that horse trough will be destroyed one day. It's rotting. It's dry rotting somewhere right now. But these life changes that took place in that horse trough can never be taken away. And I've seen some of the work that y'all are doing right here. Because you are a church that makes room for this community. You have Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts that meet here. There's art, Gabriel Homes. I don't know what Dead Robot Society is, but I want to learn more because I have a kid that loves robots. There's Vacation Bible School taking place here this July. There's more people signing up and more going to come. Those are things that are making an eternal impact because you're willing to invest in those things, the things that are secure and lasting. Eternal treasures are the result of giving and ministry, that commitment to being a generous church. When you give to Dranesville, you're giving to stories like these, stories that are changing the world, changing lives. You're a part of something bigger than yourself. Giving leads to an eternal reward, not a financial return. There's a kingdom impact. The thing I love about my work at the foundation is that we get to connect, excuse me, giving with a meaningful plan. Because without a plan, things go on autopilot. Things get defaulted. Things get dragged just to the curb, to the garage sale, to be given away. Values get lost when there isn't a plan. Families can get confused. But when there is a plan on how you want to give, you decide the story that you want to write. That's why I encourage you to plan giving while you're still living, planning what happens later on, so that things aren't given away, but you get to send them ahead with purpose. Hear these words from 1 Timothy. Tell them to use their money to do good. They should be rich in good works and generous to those in need, always being ready to share with others. By doing this, they will store up their treasures as a good foundation for the future, so that they may experience true life. Be rich in good deeds, be generous and willing to share, and lay up treasures for the future. So what kind of treasures are you storing up? What kind of treasures are you storing up? All right, so I'm going to give you a simple action plan for today. If you've never given anything, give something. Give something. Start somewhere. It doesn't even have to be to the church here. Give something to somebody doing good in the community. Give something. A person, a ministry, a cause. It's not about the amount. It's about the decision of saying yes to giving. If you've given something somewhere, if you've given faithfully before to Dranesville, consider making it a habit. Make it a habit of your heart. Because here's the thing, your family is going to see that habit. They're going to see that consistency. They're going to see that it matters to you. If you've already made it a habit, consider moving towards a percentage. I call this the go to 10 strategy. Think proportion, not amount again. Use the tithe as a guide. It's not about being perfect. It's about the progress moving towards that 10. And if you're already hitting 10 now, let's plan your legacy. Decide what story, what resources that you will use to tell that story. Clarify it with your family. Consider making a plan. So, give something, make it a habit, go to 10, and plan your legacy. Wherever you are on that journey, take the next step today. Take the next step this week. Because you've spent a lifetime building, saving, providing. This season isn't about losing it. It's about leveraging it for the future. Because your possessions won't last, your investments won't last, but what you do for others will. If the garage sale is inevitable, it's better to decide ahead of time what your story will tell. Would you pray with me? Gracious, loving God, we thank you for this day, for the opportunity to gather and to worship you. God, we confess that so many times in our lives we find ourselves clinging to those things that we believe will give us security, but they are just simply temporary. They fade away, they rot, and are destroyed. God, we confess and we ask for your forgiveness. Forgive us for those times where we've invested in things that don't offer the return that you give us in those eternal things. God, strengthen us with your Spirit to be people who are investing in the secure of the eternal. God, we thank you for loving us. We love you. Amen.
Thanks for joining us. If you're interested in visiting us in person, we are at the corner of Liberty Meeting Court and Sugarland Road. Look forward to seeing you soon.